Stop putting every single thing in the refrigerator. I know why you do it. You were taught that cold means safe, cold means fresh, cold means responsible. And for many foods, that's true. But there are a handful of everyday staples where the refrigerator doesn't protect them. It changes them. It changes their texture, their chemistry, and in a few cases, it can increase the formation of compounds that researchers have raised concerns about for long-term brain and body health. And if you're over 60, these small changes matter more than people realize, because the aging body tends to handle inflammation, blood sugar swings, and foodborne exposures differently than it did at 30. But what if I told you this isn't about becoming scared of your kitchen? It's about becoming wiser in it. By the end of this video, you'll know 5 common foods you should stop storing in the fridge, what cold actually does to them, why that can matter for inflammation and memory over time, and the simple, practical place to keep each one instead, so you can eat well, waste less, and protect your future with calm, steady habits. Let's begin with the one that surprises people because it feels so innocent. Think about Frank, 74. Frank keeps a neat home. He's the kind of man who rinses his produce, stacks things in tidy rows, and believes the refrigerator is the safe zone. So when he brings home a bag of potatoes, he places them right in the fridge, because in his mind, that's how you keep them from going bad. A week later, he makes home fries. He cooks them until they're well browned, because crisp feels satisfying. And he has no idea that the cold storage may have quietly set the stage for a different kind of chemistry once those potatoes hit high heat. Here's the why, and it's important. When potatoes are kept at low temperatures, their starch can convert into more reducing sugars. When those sugars are later cooked at high temperatures, frying, roasting, baking, they can react with an amino acid in the potato to form acrylamide, a compound that has been widely discussed in food safety because of potential health concerns. One study looking at potato storage found that low-temperature storage increased reducing sugars and was associated with higher acrylamide formation during frying compared to warmer storage. And food safety guidance meant for everyday people, regular families, regular kitchens, often says the simplest step is this: store potatoes outside the refrigerator, because refrigeration prior to cooking can increase acrylamide levels after high heat cooking. Now, I want to be careful and honest with you, like a wise friend should be. This doesn't mean one batch of roasted potatoes will give you dementia. That's not how health works. But it does mean that for older adults, especially if you eat fried or roasted potato foods often, small, repeated exposures matter more over the long haul. And acrylamide has been studied for neurotoxic effects in research settings, with scientists describing how exposure can harm nerve function and contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation in the nervous system. So what should Frank do instead? Keep whole, raw potatoes in a cool, dark, dry place. Think pantry, cabinet, or a shelf away from the oven. Not in a sealed plastic bag that traps moisture. Paper is better. Air is better. Darkness is better. And if you want one extra brain-friendly habit, when you cook potatoes, aim for lightly golden rather than deeply browned, and consider soaking cut potatoes briefly before high-heat cooking, because some guidance suggests soaking can reduce acrylamide formation. This isn't about perfection. It's about lowering risk, one quiet choice at a time. And that leads us to a food that almost everybody tosses into the produce drawer without a second thought. Think about Elaine, 68. Elaine cooks like many of us do. Simple meals, familiar flavors. She buys a bag of onions and slides them right into the fridge. At first, everything seems fine. But then she notices something. The onions start getting soft. They smell stronger. Sometimes there's dampness, and she can't quite tell if it's the onion or the drawer. One evening, she chops an onion that looks mostly okay, and later she feels bloated and unsettled, not violently ill, just off. Here's what's happening. Whole dry onions are meant to be stored in a cool, dry, well-ventilated place. When they sit in a humid environment with less airflow, they're more likely to break down, soften, and develop mold or spoilage. The National Onion Association's storage guidance emphasizes cool, dry, well-ventilated storage, and specifically warns against storing onions in plastic where air circulation is poor. They also note onions shouldn't be stored with potatoes. Now, is a refrigerated onion automatically toxic? No. But spoiled food can irritate the gut, and the gut is not separate from the brain. As we age, our stomach acid and digestive resilience can change. Our immune response can be slower. What you could get away with at 40 can leave you feeling drained at 70. So the better habit is simple. Store whole onions somewhere dry with airflow, basket, bowl, mesh bag, a cabinet that isn't warm and steamy, and keep them away from potatoes. Those two, sitting together, tend to make each other spoil faster. Now let me ask you something gently, because I'm curious about your home, not just your food. Have you ever opened your produce drawer and noticed one strong onion smell that seems to spread into everything around it? If that's happened to you, I'd love to hear what you noticed. Did it change how you store them now? There's another shift most people don't expect because it doesn't look like spoilage. It looks like disappointment. Think about Harold, 71. Harold treats himself once in a while. He buys beautiful tomatoes, maybe from a local stand, maybe the nicer ones at the store. He puts them in the fridge because that's what he's always done. Then he slices one for a sandwich, and it's bland, mealy, cold in the wrong way. He thinks, these tomatoes just aren't what they used to be. But the truth is, the refrigerator may have muted what makes a tomato feel alive. Scientists have described how chilling tomatoes can reduce the compounds responsible for aroma and flavor. One report explains that cooling tomatoes below about 54 degrees Fahrenheit can stop them from making some of the substances that contribute to taste, and that after longer cold storage, like a week at typical fridge temperatures, tomatoes showed losses in key aroma-related compounds, confirmed by taste testing. And why does that matter for health, not just flavor? Because when we're over 60, appetite and nutrition can become a quiet battle. If food tastes dull, people tend to reach for more salt, more sugar, more processed punch to feel satisfied. If tomatoes taste vibrant, you're more likely to eat the simple, nourishing meal, tomatoes, olive oil, a bit of protein, some greens, and feel content. So here's the calmer, wiser storage method. Keep whole tomatoes on the counter, out of direct sunlight. Let them be what they are, fruits that finish their story at room temperature. And once you cut a tomato, yes, then refrigerate what's left in a sealed container and use it soon. The rule is not never refrigerate anything, it's refrigerate the right version of the food. Right here in the middle, I want to invite you into something. If you're the kind of person who wants to age with steadiness, protecting your mind, your mobility, your independence, then you're our kind of person. And if you'd like more gentle, practical wisdom like this, consider joining us again. This is the kind of community where we don't chase panic. We practice smart, simple habits that add up. Now, there's a food that people store wrong for a different reason, not because it feels safer, but because it feels tidy. Think about Maria, 76. Maria likes an organized kitchen. She buys garlic in bulk so she doesn't have to shop as often, and she puts it in the fridge to keep it from drying out. A little while later, she notices green shoots inside the cloves. Some feel rubbery, some develop spots, and she starts wondering if the garlic has gone bad. Here's the reality. Garlic is a storage crop, but it has preferences. Cornell Small Farms describes optimal home storage conditions for garlic as fairly cool, relatively dry, and well ventilated, around the upper 50s Fahrenheit. And they note that below about 50 degrees, garlic is likely to sprout, adding a very plain warning. Don't be tempted to store garlic in your fridge. Sprouting isn't the end of the world, but it changes the garlic's character. And if a refrigerator area is humid, moisture can also encourage spoilage over time. So what do? Store whole bulbs in a breathable setup, mesh bag, open basket, a dry corner of the kitchen away from the stove steam. You want airflow, not dampness. And if you've already peeled or chopped garlic, that's different. Peeled or chopped garlic should be refrigerated and used promptly. This is the theme you're starting to feel, isn't it? Whole foods that are still living often want air and room temperature. Cut foods that are exposed want cold and containment. And this leads us to the one that people argue about at family gatherings. Because someone will always say, "Put the bread in the fridge so it doesn't mold." Think about George, 73. George hates waste. He puts bread in the refrigerator because he thinks it will last longer. But what happens is the bread turns dry and hard. Toast helps a little, but sandwiches become sad. And then George does something many older adults do without realizing it. He stops eating the better bread and starts buying the ultra-processed kind that stays soft forever. Here's what food science says in plain language. Bread stales largely because of a process called starch retrogradation, where starch molecules firm up as bread cools and sits. And according to an explanation from the kitchen, stalling happens very rapidly when bread is stored just above freezing, like in a refrigerator, while freezing helps prevent stalling. So refrigeration is the worst of both worlds for bread texture. It doesn't keep bread pleasantly fresh. It makes it feel old faster. Now, what about mold? Mold is serious, and some molds can produce harmful compounds. The safest rule in a senior home is simple. If bread is moldy, don't just cut off the spot. Discard the loaf, especially if your immune system isn't what it used to be, or if you have lung issues, or you live with someone medically vulnerable. But the better storage strategy is this. If you'll eat the bread within a couple of days, keep it at room temperature in a bread box, paper bag, or another breathable container so moisture doesn't build up. If you won't finish it soon, freeze it in portions. Freezing preserves bread well, and you can toast straight from frozen. And let me ask you something, because I suspect many of you have a memory here. Did you grow up in a home where bread lived on the counter, maybe in a simple bread box, and nobody thought twice about it? If this surprised you, I'd genuinely love to hear how your household handled bread back then, compared to now. Now we've covered the 5 foods, but I promised you something deeper than a list. Because the real issue, the part connected to inflammation and brain health, isn't just one onion or one tomato. It's the pattern. So let me give you one final point, a wise kitchen rule that ties everything together. Think about Nora and Bill, both in their early 70s. They're not trying to become health gurus. They're just trying to feel good. Steady energy, clearer thinking, less achy inflammation in the mornings. And what they did wasn't dramatic. They created 2 simple zones in their kitchen. Zone 1 is the cold zone, leftovers, cut produce, dairy, cooked meats, things that truly benefit from refrigeration. Zone 2 is the dry breathing zone, whole potatoes, whole onions, whole garlic bulbs, whole tomatoes that still need flavor and life, and bread that will be eaten soon. And then they added one tiny habit that I love because it costs nothing. Once a week, just once, they do a 60-second fridge moisture check. They open the produce drawer. If there's dampness, they wipe it. They check if any onion smell is taking over. They look for anything slimy, anything soft, anything quietly spoiling. Because here's the truth that's often harder to accept. A refrigerator is not a magical vault. It's a damp, busy environment with temperature changes, crowded containers, and little pockets where moisture collects. And for older adults, lowering the overall burden on the body matters. Less exposure to spoiled food irritants, more stable blood sugar, less reliance on heavily browned high-heat foods, more enjoyment of fresh, flavorful produce that makes healthy eating feel satisfying instead of restrictive. When people talk about dementia prevention, they often talk about big things: genes, medications, expensive supplements. But day to day, the brain is also shaped by the quiet background noise of life: sleep, movement, social connection, and inflammation. And inflammation is influenced by the small choices you repeat, not once, but for years. So if you do nothing else after listening today, do this. Take those potatoes out of the fridge. Move the onions somewhere dry with airflow. Let tomatoes live on the counter until they're cut. Give garlic a breathable home. Stop refrigerating bread. Either eat it soon at room temperature or freeze it. That's not fear, that's wisdom. And I want to end with something empowering. because you deserve that. You are not too old to change. You are experienced enough to choose what matters. And the beautiful part is this. These changes don't require willpower. They require placement, just moving food to the right spot. And every time you do, you're sending your future self a quiet message. I'm still here. I'm still paying attention. And I'm still worth caring for.